The defined terms are a pretty important part of almost every contract, right? So often in contracts, there's words, and sometimes they're in quotation marks, or bold. It'll be something like usage data in this agreement means blank. And that can be quite an important feature of the agreement because the words usage data might not always mean, in that specific contract, might not always mean what you, a reader, think they mean. Like it just might not always be the plain and logical meaning. And so an experienced contract reviewer knows that if you're reading a contract and you come across a defined term, you really, really, really should go and make sure you're clear on what the defined term means and if it means what you think it means. And so for a reviewer to do that, they frequently have to go, like they might be on page 32, read a defined term, and they might have to like go back to the front of the agreement, like section 1 is often the defined term section, and like go through the defined term section and find that defined term in it. And sometimes the defined term even has like further defined terms in it, right? So usage data and the definition of usage data may then refer out to several other defined terms like date and number and customer. Like even though you think you know what these words mean, and like you can go to like a dictionary and look up what these words mean, like what they mean in the context of a contract, if they're capitalized and they are defined terms, they mean whatever the contract says they are. And sometimes like tricky lawyers will even go through and mess with the defined terms on purpose because they know that people can be kind of lazy with checking the defined terms. And so really being able to get at the defined terms in an agreement can be pretty useful because it can help you see what the contract actually means. And so what defined term detection does, this is a artificial intelligence feature that goes and finds the defined term and tells you what it is. And often defined terms might be in like section 1, but sometimes they're defined in line in the text. And what defined term detection does is it just outputs what the defined term, all the different defined terms are. So that can drive a couple different features. One that we thought about before was using defined term detection to power hover over defined terms, right? So you could like hover over a defined term with your cursor and it would show you what the definition is. Another thing is it could help you prepare like a table of all the defined terms in a document. As I mentioned, many of those are in the sort of front part of the agreement, section 1, section 2, but sometimes they're also defined in the text. And so it's not simple enough to just go to section 1 and you have the sort of dictionary of all the defined terms used in documents. Sometimes you got to go to other places and it can be hard. And so defined term detection as an artificial intelligence feature can help people who are trying to build either of those two capabilities into their systems. Some notes with defined term detection, sometimes defined terms, as I mentioned before, are sort of have embedded defined terms within them. And so you got to figure out how to like, you're going to treat a defined term that has a defined term that has a defined term that has a defined term in it, like how you're going to sort of treat that chain is one problem. The other problem is sometimes defined terms will refer to something outside the document. So they might say, especially if you're talking about a defined term in an agreement that's part of a family of other agreements, sometimes the defined terms might be defined in some other document. And so you might have to go out to that other document. With the state of the art in today's sort of contracts, AI, it's unlikely that you're going to get great results if you have to go to another document to get defined terms, but otherwise this feature should work reasonably well if you can find a vendor that has it.